Daniel stood frozen in the doorway, his chest rising and falling with confusion. For weeks, his house had been filled with endless crying. His son, Lucas, never seemed to rest, no matter what Daniel tried. Expensive nannies came and left within days, each one declaring the baby impossible. Yet here, in the arms of Clara, the young nanny he had hired only 3 days ago, Lucas was calm. More than calm. He was smiling. Daniel's fists tightened at his sides. "You can't just pick him up whenever you want," he snapped, his voice echoing through the modern, cold living room. The marble floor reflected his tense figure, a man in an expensive suit who looked powerful on the outside, but completely lost inside. Clara didn't flinch. She rocked the baby gently, her voice low, steady, almost like a lullaby. "He wouldn't stop crying, sir. I tried putting him in the crib, but he screamed harder. So I thought, maybe if he stayed close, he'd feel safe." Safe. The word pierced Daniel deeper than he expected. When was the last time Lucas had felt safe with him? Daniel swallowed hard, refusing to let the thought show. He approached, trying to sound firm. "You're just a nanny. If something happens to him, it's my responsibility." Clara looked up, her dark eyes unwavering. "I know how to hold a baby. I raised my 2 younger brothers when my mother worked. Believe me, sir, I wouldn't risk your child." She adjusted the cloth sling tied around her shoulders, securing Lucas carefully. The baby's tiny hand clutched her shirt, his blue eyes glistening with quiet curiosity. Daniel felt an unexpected ache in his chest. Lucas hadn't looked at him like that in weeks. Every time he tried to hold his son, all he received was screaming, as if the child could sense his fear, his guilt. Because, deep down, Daniel knew the truth. He avoided holding Lucas whenever he could. The baby's presence reminded him too much of her, of Sophia, his late wife, who had died giving birth. He turned away, rubbing his temples. "You don't understand. It's not just about calming him. It's about—" He stopped, the words catching in his throat. "About what?" "About not letting anyone else step into the place Sophia should have filled. About not facing the gnawing pain that came every time he heard his son cry." Clara's voice was gentle, but firm. "Babies don't cry to make life harder, sir. They cry because it's the only way they know how to say, 'Please, don't leave me alone.'" Daniel froze. The simple truth in her words felt heavier than any lecture he had received from doctors or therapists. He looked back at Lucas, who let out a soft giggle, a sound so pure and fragile that it broke something inside him. For the first time in months, Daniel felt a flicker of warmth, of hope. But in the shadow of that hope, a dangerous thought stirred, one he wasn't ready to face. The next morning, Daniel sat in his office with a cup of untouched coffee, staring at the pile of contracts on his desk. Numbers and words blurred together. He had built his company on discipline and control, but when it came to his own child, he felt powerless. Every cry from upstairs cut through him like a blade. Then came silence. Daniel's chest tightened. Silence in this house was never a good sign. He rushed upstairs and stopped at the doorway of Lucas's nursery. Clara was there again, humming softly. Lucas rested against her chest, his little fists unclenched, breathing peacefully. For a moment, the sight was so gentle that Daniel forgot to breathe. "You're doing it again," he said finally, his voice harsher than intended. Clara didn't look guilty. She turned, calm as ever. "He was crying, sir. Do you want me to leave him screaming until he loses his breath?" Daniel clenched his jaw. "That's what the experts say. He needs to learn to self-soothe." She tilted her head. "Sir, he's 6 months old. He doesn't know how to soothe himself. He only knows one thing, whether someone comes when he calls or not." Her words sank into him like stones. He remembered Sophia's last request, whispered weakly in the hospital bed before she slipped away. "Take care of him, Daniel. He needs you." But Daniel hadn't been there. Not really. He had buried himself in work, in meetings, in anything that numbed the weight of loss. And here was this young nanny, who after only 3 days seemed to know his son better than he did. He turned to leave, but Lucas's sudden giggle stopped him. Daniel glanced back, and for the first time in forever, his son looked alive. Bright eyes, soft smile, almost as if the baby was saying, "I'm okay, Dad. Don't you see? Downstairs later that afternoon, Daniel found himself pacing the living room when the doorbell rang. It was Dr. Evelyn Hart, the family's longtime psychologist and Sophia's closest friend. A woman in her 40s, always impeccably dressed, Evelyn had been guiding Daniel through his grief since the funeral. She stepped in, noticing the toys scattered around. "Daniel, how are things going with Lucas?" Daniel hesitated. He's calmer, strangely calmer. Clara's been carrying him a lot. At once, Evelyn's brows furrowed. "Carrying him? While she works?" "Yes, but that's not safe. Babies need boundaries, Daniel. They need to learn independence, or they'll grow overly attached to the wrong person." Her words made Daniel's stomach twist. He remembered how Lucas smiled at Clara, how his tiny hands reached for her the moment she appeared. Was that wrong? Was he letting his son build a bond that could shatter later? Evelyn placed a hand on his arm, her tone firm but laced with concern. "I know you're desperate to see Lucas happy, but don't confuse temporary comfort with real development. You must be careful not to let a stranger replace what should come from you, or from family." Daniel swallowed hard. The confidence in her voice was unshakable, the kind that made him question his instincts. He nodded, though deep down, unease lingered. That evening, as Clara sang softly upstairs and Lucas cooed with delight, Daniel sat in the dimly lit study, torn between two voices, Clara's quiet truth and Evelyn's stern warning. Which one was he supposed to believe? That night, Daniel barely slept. Every time he closed his eyes, he heard two voices battling in his head. Clara's soft reassurance, "He only cries because he doesn't want to be alone," and Evelyn's stern warning, "You're letting a stranger replace what should come from you." By morning, Daniel felt hollow. The sound of Lucas crying drifted from upstairs. Normally, he would have avoided it, buried himself in emails until a nanny handled the noise. But something inside him shifted. He climbed the stairs slowly, his chest pounding. The nursery door was ajar. Daniel pushed it open. Clara was kneeling beside the crib, gently stroking Lucas's tiny hand. "Sure, it's okay. I'm here." Lucas's cries quieted into soft whimpers. His watery eyes focused on her, and just like that, the storm passed. Daniel stood frozen, guilt crawling over him. Why can she do it when I can't? Why does my son look at her as if she's the only safe place in this world? Clara glanced up, noticing him. "Do you want to try?" she asked softly. Daniel blinked. "What?" "Pick him up," she said, rising to her feet. "Hold him. He needs to know his father's arms can be just as safe." His throat tightened. "He'll cry harder if I do." "You don't know that," Clara replied gently. "And even if he does, it doesn't mean you failed. It just means he's still learning to trust you." The words stung, not because they were harsh, but because they were true. Daniel hesitated, then slowly reached for Lucas. Clara guided him, steadying the baby as Daniel clumsily took him in his arms. At first, Lucas squirmed, a faint whimper on his lips. Daniel's heart raced, ready for the inevitable outburst. But Clara stood close, her hand on the baby's back, humming softly. Lucas's cries faded. His little head nestled against Daniel's chest. The room fell silent. Daniel's breath caught. For the first time, his son wasn't rejecting him. He was resting, trusting. A warmth spread through Daniel's chest, almost unbearable in its intensity. He looked at Clara, his voice breaking. "How did you—" Clara smiled, though her eyes carried a hint of sadness. "Babies don't need perfection, sir. They just need presence." Before Daniel could reply, footsteps echoed in the hallway. Evelyn appeared at the doorway, her sharp gaze landing on the scene. Her lips pressed into a thin line. "I see what's happening here," she said coldly. Daniel stiffened. "Evelyn, this is exactly what I warned you about," she cut in, stepping inside. "Daniel, you're letting her blur the lines. She's the help, not family. If you allow this, Lucas will grow dependent on her, and when she leaves, he'll be broken." Clara held Lucas closer, protective instinct flashing in her eyes. "I'm not trying to replace anyone. I just want him to feel loved." Evelyn turned on her with icy authority. "Love is not your responsibility. You were hired for work, nothing more." The words sliced through the air. Lucas, sensing the tension, began to fuss again. Clara instinctively rocked him, her voice steady. With respect, Doctor, a baby doesn't care about titles or contracts. He only cares about who answers when he cries. Daniel's heart pounded. The contrast between them was stark. Evelyn's polished certainty versus Clara's quiet conviction. One spoke in theories, the other in truths felt in the heart. But Evelyn stepped closer, her tone sharpening. Daniel, listen to me. You're vulnerable. You've lost your wife, and now you're desperate for comfort. Don't confuse gratitude or attraction with something deeper. It will only hurt you. And your son. Daniel froze, shame prickling his skin. Attraction? He hadn't admitted it to himself, but when he saw Clara's tenderness, something inside him stirred, a dangerous mix of gratitude and longing. Evelyn's eyes softened, her voice dropping low. Don't make a mistake that could destroy your family. Daniel looked between them. Clara, holding Lucas with such warmth, and Evelyn, his late wife's trusted friend, warning him with authority. His chest tightened under the weight of the choice. For the first time in his life, Daniel realized he didn't just need to decide what kind of father he wanted to be. He needed to decide who he could truly trust. The following days were a battlefield inside Daniel's home. On some mornings, he followed Evelyn's advice to the letter, leaving Lucas in the crib to cry, insisting the baby must learn independence. Those hours were torture. The cries echoed through the house like a wound that refused to close. Daniel buried himself in work, but the sound pierced every wall until guilt made it impossible to think. On other days, when Clara was alone with Lucas, laughter replaced the crying. She carried him on her hip while dusting, sang to him while folding laundry, and the baby's giggles filled the air like sunlight breaking through clouds. And Daniel, he couldn't deny it anymore. His son seemed alive again, but only when Clara was near. One evening, after a long day, Daniel walked past the nursery and paused. He saw Clara sitting on the floor, Lucas cradled in her lap. She was humming a lullaby, an old tune Daniel hadn't heard in years. It froze him. That song, Sophia used to sing it when she was pregnant. The same melody that once filled their home with hope. His knees felt weak as he stepped inside. Where did you learn that? Clara looked up, surprised. It's a song my grandmother taught me. She said babies always fall asleep to it. Daniel swallowed hard, his chest tightening with memory. Lucas's eyelids fluttered, his breathing steady, the picture of peace. For a brief, fragile moment, Daniel felt Sophia's presence in the room. As if through Clara's voice, she was watching over them. But the moment shattered when Evelyn arrived for her scheduled session. She entered without knocking, her sharp heels striking the floor like gunshots. The warmth in the room disappeared instantly. Her eyes locked on Clara, holding Lucas. Her lips curled. Again, Daniel bristled. He's calm, Evelyn. Happier than I've ever seen him. That's the illusion, she snapped. What looks like happiness now will turn into dependency later. Don't you see? The more he clings to her, the more he'll suffer when she's gone. You're letting this girl entangle herself in places she doesn't belong. Clara stood slowly, her arms tightening around Lucas. Her voice was steady, but Daniel heard the tremor beneath it. I'm not trying to take anyone's place. I can't stand to see him hurting. Evelyn's eyes narrowed like a blade. And what about Daniel? Can't you see what you're doing to him? He's grieving, vulnerable, and you're slipping into the cracks. Do you know what that's called? Exploitation. The accusation hit the room like thunder. Daniel's breath caught. That's enough, Evelyn. No, Daniel. She pressed, her tone both sharp and soothing, like poison coated in honey. You don't realize it, but you're transferring feelings. Gratitude, longing, it's not love. It's desperation. And if you keep feeding it, you'll destroy yourself. And Lucas. Daniel's chest ached, torn in two. He looked at Clara. She said nothing, only rocked Lucas gently, her eyes glistening but defiant. Evelyn stepped closer, lowering her voice as if sharing a secret. I promised Sophia I'd protect this family. Do you think she'd want a stranger, someone you barely know, raising her son? Or would she want you to heal properly, with real guidance? The mention of Sophia struck Daniel like a knife. He had no defense, no strength to argue. Later that night, Evelyn cornered him in his study. The air smelled of whiskey and old books, shadows stretching across the walls. She sat across from him, her posture impeccable, her eyes piercing. "You need to make a choice, Daniel," she said calmly. "Either you set boundaries with Clara, or I can't continue helping you. And you need me more than you admit." Daniel rubbed his temples. "Lucas smiles with her. He sleeps when she's near. Doesn't that mean something?" "It means he's clinging to the wrong source," Evelyn said firmly. "That girl is temporary, and when she's gone, your son will be left emptier than before. Do you want that for him?" Her words coiled around his mind like chains. He wanted to protest, to scream that Clara brought light back into their lives, but doubt gnawed at him. What if Evelyn was right? What if trusting Clara was just another way to avoid his grief? The study grew silent. Evelyn leaned forward, her voice soft, almost intimate. "Daniel, you can't let the past or your confusion blind you. You need structure, discipline, for yourself and for Lucas. Trust me, I know what's best." Daniel stared at the whiskey in his glass, his reflection distorted in the amber liquid. His heart screamed one truth, but Evelyn's voice, calm, rational, authoritative, drowned it out. At last, with a heavy sigh, he whispered, "Maybe you're right." And somewhere in the quiet house, Clara rocked Lucas to sleep, unaware that a decision was forming, one that could change all their lives forever. The next morning, Daniel asked Clara to meet him in the study before starting her chores. She walked in carrying Lucas, her expression calm, but a trace of worry in her eyes. "Did I do something wrong, sir?" she asked softly. Daniel's throat tightened. He couldn't look directly at her. Evelyn's words from the night before replayed in his mind like a script: boundaries, dependence, exploitation. He forced himself to speak. "Clara, from today, I want you to focus only on the house. Leave Lucas to me, or to someone else I choose." Clara blinked, confusion flickering across her face. "But, sir, he cries when—" "I know," Daniel cut in, his voice colder than he intended. "But this can't continue. He can't depend on you like this." For a moment, silence stretched between them. Lucas whimpered softly, sensing the tension. Clara kissed the baby's forehead and handed him gently into Daniel's arms. Her voice trembled. "If that's what you want, sir, then I'll respect it." She turned to leave, shoulders heavy, but Daniel stopped her. His voice cracked despite himself. "Clara, I don't doubt your heart. You've done more for him than anyone else. Maybe more than me. But maybe that's the problem." Her eyes glistened, but she nodded. "I understand." Then she walked out, her steps echoing through the empty halls. That evening, Evelyn arrived early for her session. Daniel sat in the study, Lucas restless in his arms. The boy cried and squirmed, no matter how much Daniel tried to soothe him. His tiny fists pounded against Daniel's chest, demanding comfort Daniel couldn't provide. "Good," Evelyn said, closing the door behind her. "This is part of the process. He must learn." Daniel looked at his son, red-faced and trembling. His heart twisted. "Learn what? That the world is cold? That love is a privilege, not a promise?" Lucas wailed louder, reaching his tiny arms toward the hallway, toward the direction Clara had gone earlier that day. Daniel's eyes burned. For the first time, he felt anger. Not at the baby, not even at himself, but at the impossible choice forced upon him. He looked at Evelyn, her calm expression, her perfect posture, her unshakable certainty. Then he looked at his son, desperate for comfort, desperate for love. And for the first time, Daniel whispered a truth he could no longer ignore. "Maybe I don't need more boundaries, Evelyn. Maybe what my son needs is me. And maybe the only one who showed me how to give him that was Clara." Evelyn's expression faltered, a flicker of frustration breaking through her polished mask. The decision was far from over. But in that moment, Daniel finally understood. Love wasn't measured in rules or distance. It was measured in presence. And Lucas deserved nothing less.